Welcome, everyone, to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus in Arlington, Texas. This is The Profit Break. If you're joining us for the first time, we're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you'll be well on your way to improving yourself and your profitability. Do you ever wonder whether your facility maintenance is really doing enough to help your business? Or are you at just a point of frustration and just happy it doesn't hurt your business? On today's show, we're going to take a look at what it takes to make your maintenance department truly an asset to your organization. Today, on this show, we're going to take a look at the department as a whole and your role as leadership in what you can do to just make your team perform as best they can. So we're not going to talk about turning wrenches. We're not going to talk about how the machines work or how they perform. We just want to talk about, could the maintenance in general be better for you and your business inside your operation? Well, let's look at it this way. Let's start with, do you ever have to move somebody? Do you ever have a lane breakdown? Do you ever have do you leave a pair of lanes next to your leagues as a breakdown pair? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We want that to go away. So we're going to talk about two pieces. We're going to talk about yield management, which is what I just kind of talked about. How many turns can we get on these lanes? Are these machines performing as they will? And then the three pillars of accountability, because accountability is where it's all going to work. So let's talk about the yield management for just a moment. When we talk about yield management, we're really talking about, think of it of a hotel or an airline. When you think about a seat on a plane, that plane takes off from Dallas to Chicago, and if every seat wasn't filled, they'll never ever be able to sell that seat again. We have the same situation in our bowling centers. If that machine isn't running and that lane isn't available, you'll never be able to sell that time slot ever again. 10 a.m. is 10 a.m. on Tuesday, it's it. It doesn't come back again. So our goal is to try to make sure these machines are running always. And you have to do that by getting ahead of yourself and getting ahead and doing things proactively instead of reactively, but that's a whole nother profit break. So we're talking about just making sure that they're working, and here's how we do it. So first of all, let's get rid of and lose the idea, the whole concept of a breakdown pair. I want you to just slash it from your vocabulary. Don't use it anymore. We're not going to have a breakdown pair. And if a league wants a buffer pair between them, they can pay for that pair alongside of you. Whole nother conversation, but the whole idea here is we have to make sure we get the maximum use out of our lanes to make the maximum profit. So these machines have to be running at full capacity. If you want to switch to a model where you're using time bowling instead of by the line, you really have to have your machines performing at a high enough level for that to happen. So let's lose that concept. So how do we do that? Let's talk about getting your team to work and holding them accountable. And again, all of this is covered in much more depth in our online courses. We have 9 of them specifically for the maintenance department. And the first 2, this piece I'm talking about today comes from those first 2. This is specifically for you. How do you hold your team accountable? And I call it the 3 pillars. The labor itself. How do I budget my labor? How do I budget for my parts and hardware and supplies? And then how do I hold my team accountable through their frames per stop? You put those 3 pieces together and we can balance out what matters in your center. And how do you do it? What's your role in all of that? Sure, you give them a budget. You set a frames per stop and how much the level you want it to be, and you set how much labor, and you're accountable to all that, and then they're going to be accountable to all of that. So, but we have to work as a team. You have to have your team, the maintenance department, working as a piece of your management team. They should be involved in your daily or weekly meetings that you have with your management team. So they're not surprised when there's a bus coming in and they were planning on taking 5 and 6 out of play to do some work, but nobody told them that you had the whole house filled at 10 o'clock on a weekday morning that they would normally do their work. And we do that through communication. Is your communication on an island? Is your maintenance team out there behind, out of sight, out of mind? Nobody thinks about them because they're not there to be seen. Well, we got to get that we got to get them part of the team where there's two-way communication, where you're letting them know what's going on within your organization so that they can plan accordingly, and then they can communicate back to you on what you want them to give you information on. So they're reporting back what they worked on this week. So they're reporting back what's working well, what's not working well. That communication's got to be a two-way street, and get your team off of that communication island. So when we start thinking about your team and what they're looking for, first you have to appreciate the mechanic's role within your center. So just a quick rundown of things. Bowling specific, pin setter, scoring, lane conditioner, all of those things, what's their role? But they should be, and you absolutely, when you're hiring a person to work in your department, you should be looking for their skill sets when it comes to inventory control and budgeting and record keeping. It's not just, can they turn the wrench? We have to be looking beyond that. You're looking at keeping the lane conditioning complete, computer systems working, the electrical systems working. You know, they're your go-to guy when things aren't working in your bowling center. It may even be the plumbing, HVAC, and air conditioning. All of those things are things that your maintenance department is pretty much responsible for. So when you start thinking about appreciating their role, we have to be considering about their role as trying to get out of reactive to proactive maintenance. So all of those things going on, I mean, they spend, but when you have a proactive maintenance program, you will spend less in the long run than compared to centers that have no plan and budget in place. So when you're thinking about your center, I can't afford to put this budget. Kelly, I see you got a budget for labor, and you got a budget for parts, and you got a budget for accountability. Kelly, I see what you're saying, but if I give them a budget, they're going to spend it. And well, I hope so. Right? Because if you spend it now instead of reactionary, you'll spend less. Because if you have to order something special order in, and you have to go to a secondary supplier because yours doesn't have it at the given moment, that's going to cost you more. If you have to overnight it, that's going to cost you more. So when you get ahead of the curve and you have this communication and you're working with your team to make sure that they have the parts that they need, so your role is to make sure that they have the tools to succeed. And remember that centers with a proactive maintenance program spends less, not more. They spend less. And in the end, you'll actually spend less on labor in the long run too. So overall, having a good program in place is a budget saver, time saver. It takes the angst away from you too. But as a leader of your organization, it is your role to give them direction. You have to be guiding them. That's not their skill set, right? You're the leader. You're the manager of the overall facility. You're the owner of the facility. It's your role to make sure that you've given them direction, goals to go for, what's coming up to be planning for. Maybe you have to sit down and help them straighten out their department so that you guys can get things moving in the right direction. Because if you can hold them accountable to a frames per stop, then that's something they're shooting for. I had never a problem if my mechanic was standing at the front counter and the machines are running well, they're staying in budget, their labor hours aren't out of control. You know, that mechanic standing at the front counter drinking his coffee, hopefully admiring how well the machines are running. But if my machines aren't running well, I have the accountability and I have to steer them back to the back to get them go. So your goal is to raise the bar, right? Well, how do we raise that bar? And we can take that by, as I said, take the lead by example. Give them some direction. Give them some focus. Don't just let them sit back there and say, I got this, right? Oftentimes they don't. Hey, I'm a mechanic. I started in that side, so I get where you're going. You want to analyze your center and evaluate present circumstances. Where are you today? What can we do and be better in 30 days? What can we do and be better in the next quarter? What can we do and be better in 6 months? What can we do and be better in a year? It happens slowly over time. It doesn't happen overnight. To get out of reactionary mode into proactive mode can take as much as 18 months to get everything in place. Be patient, but in the end, your maintenance department can actually be valuable to you. Partner with the head mechanic to develop goals and expectations for each team member. As I mentioned, in 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, a year. push them, give them stretch goals, give them something to shoot for. Deadlines make deals. I always say, put their incentives in play based on the three legs of the stool. Hey, if you hit your budget, if you hit your labor, if you hit your frames per stop, there's an incentive there, a financial gain for them. So we're looking for that. Continually communicate and implement those goals and explanations. And again, don't get them on the island. Get communicating. Get them into your team management meetings. If you have a manager's meeting once a week, have the maintenance department in there with them so that they feel like they're part of the team. Because oftentimes, out of sight is out of mind, and they're behind the machines and nobody thinks about them being back there. And finally, enforce those expectations, right? You want to make sure that you're pushing them. And hey, if you don't manage it, they're just going to walk away. And one of the old phrases we always say, if you can measure it, you can manage it. It's your job to enforce those expectations and hold them accountable. And then, just normal Kelly way, expectations. So our first steps, I'm going to give you those things to do. Ask yourself these questions. Is there a systematic approach to maintaining the machines in your center? If the answer is no, that's okay. It's your job now to get one in place. What qualities are necessary to fill bowling position in your center, that maintenance position, whether head mechanic or a B mechanic? What skills do they need? Right? Do they need the organizational skills? Do they need? Yes. I'm always looking for somebody that has the organizational skills and maybe some basic understanding of mechanic. We can send them to school. We have schools all over for those. And how's the mechanic's role looked at in the center? Is it just out of sight, out of mind, or are they part of the management team? Are they someone that is truly respected for what they do? Sometimes it's like umpires. If everything works, nobody thinks about them, right? And finally, is the bowling center maintenance department the first place that budget cuts occur? Is it somewhere that you think about, geez, I got to cut the budget there? Well, in the long run, that's going to cost you more money. So be thinking about your maintenance department and how you do that. And then once you've answered these questions, what are our next steps? So our next steps to success are, what's your current status of the program? Pinpoint the problem areas, communicate with your team, right? And what's the best case scenario of how the program should be run? So think about where you want to go, and then finally, develop and implement a plan. You said, Kelly, you're making this sound really easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's simple, right? Put it in place. Find out the problem areas. Communicate with your team. Where are they struggling? Where could they use some help? Maybe you hire the help that you need. Maybe you move a part-timer to the back from the front. Maybe you split some time, whatever that is. But what is your best case scenario and how they should be running? And we talk about it in other courses. We talk about in other profit breaks about what the minimum number of frames per stop should be based on your model of your bowling center. So you think about how all of those work for you. And I talk about these online courses here. These online courses, Understanding Your Maintenance Program Management, Part 1, and then, which is the roles and responsibilities, and then 2, which is kind of the next stage from what I'm talking about today, Understanding Bowling Maintenance Management, Part 2, Developing and Putting the Plan in Place. These 2 courses were written really for you and your head of your maintenance department. So when you, the owner, the leadership, the general manager of your center, are trying to figure out what to do with your maintenance department, these 2 courses are an overlap for both you and for them. And if you have any questions about the strengthening of your maintenance department, or would just like additional information, or you now have 3 ways to address the maintenance department needs: the 9 online on-demand courses, the maintenance minute, or you can reach out to us at any time here at education@bpaa.com. As we wrap up another edition of the Profit Break, remember that when your focus is on growing people, people will grow your business. This episode, as well as all of our previous Profit Break episodes, are available 24/7 for you and your team at bowlinguniversity.net. Plus, new episodes are available every month. So mark your calendar, watch your email, and join us on Facebook to hear more about the latest episodes. Until then, I'm Kelly Bednar. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. See you next time.